Hello everyone. This video presents a notable event that happened on each day from the past month in history. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland under false pretenses, staging a phony border incident that gave them a claim of legitimacy. Little remembered by the public at large was that Germany had an ally that also took part in that invasion. We are not talking about the Soviet Union with their infamous attack on Poland on September 17, 1939, after Germany had invaded. We are referring to Slovakia, a fellow Slavic country with people sharing similar language and cultural traits with the Poles. The Slovak Republic contributed about 50,000 men arranged in 3 divisions to the invasion of Poland and allowed Germany to use Slovakia as a staging area for their troops ahead of the invasion. Slovakia suffered just under 200 total casualties and lost 2 aircraft in the invasion. Do you believe Germany, Slovakia, or the USSR were justified in invading Poland in 1939? On September 2, 1984, Sydney, Australia was the scene of a major shootout between rival motorcycle gangs Bandidos and Comancheros. A total of 7 people were killed and 12 were wounded in the incident known as the Malpera Massacre. Apparently the answer to our titular question is that yes, other countries do have motorcycle gangs. Our article, Mass Shooting in Canada, tells the story of another motorcycle gang-related mass shooting, this time in Canada, while Wikipedia has an article about the Nordic Biker War of 1994 to 1997 that took place in Finland and Scandinavia. The worldwide nature of motorcycle gangs is noted in another article we found by Europol that detailed 23 European countries with motorcycle gangs, and the US DOJ has also reported on the worldwide MC gang phenomenon. Did you know motorcycle gangs existed around the world? On September 3, 1976, an American Viking 2 spacecraft landed on the surface of Mars. People have always dreamed of a Mars space expedition, and although this effort did not land any humans on the Red Planet, the fact that the U.S. successfully landed a spacecraft on Mars certainly made the prospect of someday landing people on Mars more likely. Viking 2 was actually the second American spacecraft to land on Mars, the first being Viking 1 on July 20, 1976. The first Earth-launched spacecraft to fly by Mars was Mariner 4, another American spacecraft back in 1965. Scientific research and space exploration so far have failed to find proof of life on Mars, although some evidence of fossilized bacteria may or may not have been found on bits of Mars rock that fell to Earth as meteorites. Will humans land on Mars during your lifetime? On September 4, 1998, Stanford University students Larry Page and Sergey Brin founded what has become the premier internet search engine, Google. Although Google is also heavily involved in other areas such as software, AI, electronics, advertising, and cloud computing. Google was founded in the aptly named Menlo Park, California, an allusion to the site of Thomas Edison's invention laboratory. The 25-year-olds, one from the USA and the other born in Russia, were college graduates working on advanced degrees when they came up with their golden goose of a company. One of the most valuable companies in the world, Google has about 140,000 employees and is one of the big 5 American tech companies. So pervasive is Google for web surfing, the generic verb to Google has come to mean conducting an internet search. Can you imagine life before Google? On September 5, 1698, Tsar Peter I the Great of Russia enacted a tax on beards. This tax targeted the nobility in an effort to westernize Russia and proved highly unpopular. Many laws in the U.S. have also been unpopular, including blue laws against Sunday business practices, the income tax in 1861, and again in 1909 with the 16th Amendment, the insanity defense, mandatory use of automotive seatbelts first in New York in 1984, the military draft, the national 55-mile-per-hour speed limit from 1974 to 1987. Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act from 2010, has been criticized by some for being too intrusive and by others for being not intrusive enough. Prohibition from 1920 to 1933, outlawing alcoholic beverages, and red light and speed traffic cameras. What historic law do you hate the most? On September 6, 2022, we celebrate National Read a Book Day, one of the truly worthwhile days of the year when we are all reminded that there is more to life than television and the internet. The longest book according to the Guinness Book of World Records is Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, boasting an incredible 9,609,000 characters, meaning letters and spaces. The oldest book might be the Epic of Gilgamesh, which dates back to 2100 BC, though dates on ancient books are hard to verify, and another work, the Pyramid Texts of Ancient Egypt, might be older, but are not books as we think of them. The most widely read book of all time is the Christian Bible in all its forms, with an incredible 3.9 billion printed and sold in just the last 50 years. The Quran is probably the second most widely read book in history. What is your favorite book? On September 7th, 1963, the Pro Football Hall of Fame opened to the public in Canton, Ohio, the birthplace of American professional football. The first class of inductees into these hallowed walls included Red Grange, Don Hudson, Dutch Clark, Bronco Nagurski, Mel Hine, Pete Henry, Cal Hubbard, Sammy Bow, Johnny McNally, Ernie Nevers, and Jim Thorpe, all former players in what was or became the National Football League. Additionally, a group of founders and executives or owners was also included in this first class, including George Halas, Curly Lambeau, Bert Bell, Joe Carr, Tim Mara, and George Marshall. Who is your favorite member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame? What players or other involved persons do you believe belong in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that have so far not been inducted? On September 8, 1930, 3M, the better-known name of what was the Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, began selling their Scotch brand of household and office pressure-sensitive tape, the transparent stuff no self-respecting school kid, office worker, or housewife would do without. Invented by engineer Richard Drew, the transparent cellophane tape product followed the invention of masking tape by the same man. So prevalent and iconic did the Scotch tape brand become that virtually all transparent tape sold in the U.S. today is commonly referred to as Scotch tape, regardless of the actual brand or manufacturer. Later, the Scotch brand added their Magic tape, an even more transparent variety that lacks the shiny finish of the original product. The Scotch brand has also been applied by 3M to various other products such as audio and video tape. What is your favorite use for Scotch tape? On September 9, 1942, the mainland of the United States was bombed by a Japanese military aircraft when a float plane dropped incendiary bombs on Oregon near Brookings. While the U.S. avoided the devastating bombing attacks suffered by many other countries during World War II, U.S. territory was attacked, shelled and bombed outside of the continental or contiguous states, including the islands of Alaska. As for the mainland of America, the Oregon bombing incident known as the Lookout Air Raids, conducted by a Yokosuka E-14Y launched from a submarine, caused minimal damage and the intended forest fires were not induced. Another Japanese attempt to bomb mainland America was the Fugo balloon bombing campaign, in which giant balloons were launched in Japan in order to drop incendiary and small high-explosive bombs on the U.S., but this effort met with little results. On September 10, 1960, Abebe Bikila, representing Ethiopia, became the first ever sub-Saharan black African to win an Olympic gold medal by taking first place in the ultimate event of the Summer Olympics, the marathon race. The 26.2-mile-long marathon is a grueling race and is possibly the premier event of the Summer Olympics, but the fact that Bikila won the race while barefoot gives this story an entirely different angle. Bikila was a last-minute substitute runner, and no shoes that fit were available for him, leading to his running barefoot. Nearly as incredible as the 1960 Olympic story, in 1964 Bikila came down with appendicitis and underwent an operation 40 days before the event, yet he once again won the marathon and earned his second Olympic gold medal. What Olympic story do you find to be the most bizarre? On September 11, 2015, The city of Mecca, the holiest city within the religion of Islam, was the scene of a horrific accident when a crane collapsed at the Masjid al-Haram, also known as the Great Mosque, killing 111 and injuring another 394 people. The deadliest crane collapse in history, the deceased victims included believers from 12 different nations as devout Muslims were preparing for the annual Hajj pilgrimage. We have previously discussed notable disasters that struck religious gatherings or places of worship, and again we ask you, what do these disasters mean? Do you believe God is somehow testing or punishing his own believers? Are these incidents mere coincidences? Please share your opinions with us. As a question for my students and subscribers, what is the worst religion-related disaster you can think of? Please let us know in the comments section for this video. On September 12, 2013, the American Space Agency NASA reported that its spacecraft Voyager 1 had become the first ever man-made object to leave our solar system. Known as interstellar space, the space beyond our own solar system is also described as the heliopause, a region beyond the reach of the solar wind effects of our sun. Interstellar space begins about 11 or 12 billion miles outward from the sun. For perspective, most of our space satellites are between 100 and 1,000 miles above the Earth. The International Space Station is about 260 miles up, the Moon is almost 240,000 miles away, and the Sun is 93 million miles from the Earth. Voyager 1 has now been on its mission for 45 years and is more than 14.6 billion miles from the Earth. Is the enormous cost of the space program worth it? On September 13, 1977, American automotive giant General Motors made one of the epic blunders of its long business history when it introduced the Oldsmobile diesel engine, an attempt to quickly gain an advantage in the race to improve the miles per gallon performance of its cars in order to compete with more fuel-efficient foreign cars. Produced from 1978 to 1985, the GM automotive diesel engines were hastily adapted 6- and 8-cylinder gasoline engines made to work as diesels. Despite initial public enthusiasm, the terrible unreliability of these engines spelled their early demise and cost GM a ton of customer confidence and credibility. Other candidates for the worst U.S. car blunders include the Ford Edsel, the Chevrolet Corvair, the Ford Pinto, the AMC Pacer, the Chevrolet Vega, and the Cadillac Cimarron, among others. Which American car do you rate as the biggest blunder? On September 14, 326 AD, Helena of Constantinople made one of the greatest discoveries in Christian history when she found the Holy Sepulchre, the crypt where Jesus was entombed, and the true cross in Jerusalem. Splinters alleged to have come from the so-called true cross, upon which Jesus is said to have been crucified, have been sold to unsuspecting believers over the years. Many blatant, easily disputed religious scams have taken place, and we list a few for you to choose from as the biggest religious scam of all time, although you are welcome to nominate your own choice. The aforementioned true cross, the holy prepuce, the foreskin taken from Jesus during his circumcision, the imminent demise of the world as we know it having been wrongly predicted a bajillion times, and purchasing indulgences for God to reduce punishment for your sins. Which religious scam do you believe is the worst? On September 15, 1948, a North American F-86 Sabre flew at a world record 671 miles per hour. Today we ask you to tell us which jet fighter deserves to be named as the greatest of all time. We list a few contenders, but you can name your own nominees as well. The USA's North American F-86 Sabre was the premier fighter of its day, with a production run of 9,860 of all varieties. With over 13,000 produced, the USSR's MiG-15 was probably the most prolific jet fighter of all. Although only 1,200 of the USA's McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle were built, they have been in service since 1972. Over 5,000 of the USA's McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II were built, serving the U.S. and its allies for 60 years. Well over 11,000 of the USSR's MiG-21 were built during the last 30 years of the Cold War. On September 16, 1979, the rap music trio the Sugar Hill Gang was formed, and they released their hit Rapper's Delight, the first rap song to land in the Billboard Top 40 as a mainstream hit song. Today we ask our music-loving fans, what is the greatest rap song of all time? We list some to choose from, but feel free to name your own pick. Rapper's Delight, Sugar Hill Gang, 1979. The Message, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, 1982. Baby Got Back, Sir Mix-a-Lot, 1992. I Used to Love H.E.R., Common, 1994. Lose Yourself, Eminem, 2003. And Rap God, Eminem, 2013. As a question for my students and subscribers, what is the greatest rap song of all time? Who is the greatest rap artist? Please let us know in the comments section for this video. On September 17, 1983, Syracuse University student Vanessa Williams was crowned Miss America, the first African-American woman to win the coveted title. Sadly, less than a year later, a scandal involving Penthouse magazine announcing they were going to publish nude photos of Vanessa led to her resigning her office. In another twist of fate, her successor, the first runner-up in the 1983 contest to name Miss America 1984, was Suzette Charles, also of African descent. Williams rebounded from her resignation to a wonderful career in entertainment, including singing, screen acting, and stage acting. She even found success as a fashion designer. A whopping 32 years after her resignation, the Miss America contest offered a public apology to Williams for having had her resign. As a question for my students and subscribers, who is your favorite Miss America? On September 18, 1990, the tiny European Principality of Liechtenstein was admitted to the United Nations. Incredibly, Liechtenstein is only the fourth smallest country in Europe, behind Vatican City, Monaco, and San Marino. A monarchy, Liechtenstein is ruled by the Prince of Liechtenstein, though under a national constitution. With barely over 38,000 residents, this German-speaking country lies between Switzerland and Austria and occupies a minuscule 62 square miles. While the national wealth of Liechtenstein is measured by GDP, ranks a mere 149th in the world, the individual wealth of the population is a staggering $180,000 per capita as measured by nominal GDP, ranking first in the entire world. Have you ever been to Liechtenstein? Do you know anybody from Liechtenstein? Did you know Liechtenstein was a real country? On September 19, 1692, Giles Corey, age 81, became a footnote in the history of America by becoming the first and only man to be pressed to death during the infamous Salem witch trials. Today we ask our readers and viewers, what is the most horrible way to be executed? We list a few possible answers, but feel free to name your own. Boiling alive, brazen bull, burning at the stake, crucifixion, drawing and quartering, drowning, eaten by critters such as rats, ants, lions, etc., pressing, skinned alive or flaying, stoning, and suffocation. As a question for my students and subscribers, what execution would you fear the most? Please let us know in the comments section for this video. On September 20th, 1911, the RMS Olympic, the first of three enormous British luxury liners of the Olympic class, collided with the British cruiser HMS Hawke, seriously damaging both ships, although no lives were lost in the incident. Olympic, commissioned in 1911 as the largest ship in the world at that point, was later followed by the slightly larger RMS Titanic. Of course, the Titanic sank in 1912 on its maiden voyage in one of the most infamous incidents of a ship sinking, and the third sister ship of the class, the HMHS Britannic, was sunk when she hit a mine in 1916 during World War I. Olympic also served during World War I, including an incident where she rammed and sank a German U-boat. Olympic was taken out of service in 1935 and sold for scrap, ending her illustrious career. Did you know the Titanic had two sister ships? On September 21, 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor was confirmed by the Senate as the first ever female justice of the Supreme Court. What other indications do we have that American women are really on an equal basis with men? We list a few facts that can be considered signs of equal rights progress. Women's suffrage 1920, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, a married woman was first allowed to get a credit card in her own name, 1974. The first female Supreme Court Justice, Sandra Day O'Connor, 1981. The first American woman astronaut in space, Sally Ride, 1983. The first female Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, 2007. The first major party female presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton, 2016. And the first First Lady of the U.S. with a Ph.D., Dr. Jill Biden, 2021. On September 22, 1980, Iraq invaded their neighbor Iran, seeking to take advantage of the disruption caused by the Iranian Revolution. The resulting war lasted 8 years and cost each country around 500,000 people each, with no change in territory and no clear winner. Today we ask you, what was the most miscalculated invasion in history, and we give some examples to choose from, although you can name your own. U.S. invasions of Canada, 1775 and 1812, French invasion of Russia, 1812, Soviet invasion of Finland, 1939, German invasion of Soviet Union, 1941, North Korean invasion of South Korea, 1950, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, 1979, Iraq invasion of Kuwait, 1990, U.S. invasion of Iraq, 2003, and finally the Russian invasion of Ukraine, 2022. On September 23, 1986, Houston Astros pitcher Jim Deshaies set a record, striking out the first 8 batters he faced. We ask you, what MLB record is the hardest to top? We list some possible answers, but go ahead and tell us your own ideas if you prefer. Denton Cy Young, most wins by a pitcher, 511, 1890 to 1911. Young is also the only pitcher to have pitched over 700 complete games. Ty Cobb, career batting average, 366, 1905 to 1928. Joe DiMaggio, 56-game hit streak, 1941. Nolan Ryan, 7 career no-hitters, 1973 to 1991. Nolan Ryan and Bob Feller both threw 12 career one-hitters. Cal Ripken, most consecutive games played, 2,632, 1982 to 1998. On September 24, 1884, Hugo Schmeisser was born in Jena in what was then the German Empire. He would go on to everlasting fame, or infamy if you prefer, as the man that invented the assault rifle. Did you think the assault rifle inventor was Mikhail Kalashnikov, the Russian that invented the AK-47? Or perhaps you thought that Eugene Stoner, inventor of the M16 AR-15 family of assault rifles, invented the genre. Schmeisser beat both of those famous weapons designers by coming up with the STG-44 during World War II for the German Wehrmacht, a mid-power rifle that could fire either semi-automatically, one shot at a time, or fully automatic, like a regular machine gun. The name given to his invention was Sturmgewehr, which in German means assault rifle, so his invention also was the birth of the nomenclature so often thrown around in the news and political debates today. On September 25, 1961, the state of Wisconsin first required any new automobile made starting in 1962 to be equipped with front seat safety belts. While Nash Motors first offered this common-sense device in 1949, the rest of the United States was not required to have seatbelt-equipped cars until 1962, with shoulder belts required as of 1968. Despite all cars having seat belts, drivers and passengers rarely wore them, even when annoying buzzers were included to remind people to wear the hated belts. New York paved the way with a law requiring seatbelt use in a moving vehicle on a public road, and all other states eventually followed except one. New Hampshire is the lone holdout state that does not require all drivers and passengers to wear seatbelts, with the exception of people under the age of 18. Do you believe seatbelt use should be required by law? On September 26, 46 BC, Roman dictator Julius Caesar dedicated a temple to Venus Genetrix, a temple he promised the goddess while fighting the Battle of Pharsalus. Today we ask you, who would you dedicate a temple to? We graciously supply a few suggestions, although you may freely pick your own. Colonel Harlan Sanders, the godfather of fried chicken. Eminem, the rap god. Michael Phelps, the modern Olympian water god. Philo Farnsworth, the inventor of the first fully functional and complete all-electronic television system. Teresa Bellissimo, the alleged creator of buffalo wings. And finally, the sun, because George Carlin said so. As a question for my students and subscribers, who or what would you build a temple to? Please let us know in the comments for this video. On September 27, 1944, the Kessel mission, which resulted in the largest loss by a USAAF group on any mission in World War II, was so successfully covered up that even today few are even aware it occurred. Today we list several egregious examples of the U.S. government misleading Americans and ask which example is the worst. In 1898, debatable claims about Spain blowing up the USS Maine gave the U.S. an excuse to declare war on Spain. In 1944, during a D-Day rehearsal, information concerning how friendly fire and German E-boats sank 2 ships, damaged 2 more ships, killed 749 and wounded 200 was kept secret. In 2003, lies about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction led to a U.S. invasion of Iraq. And in 2004, Pat Tillman was killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan, although reports claimed the former NFL football player died by enemy fire. On September 28, 2008, the history of space exploration reached a new milestone when SpaceX, a private company, launched their Falcon 1 unmanned spacecraft, the first private spacecraft launched into orbit. SpaceX and the business of private space launches is the project of Elon Musk, an entrepreneur worth a staggering $254 billion, making him the richest man in the world. SpaceX is so far the premier private space launch company, sending various communications satellites into orbit, giving NASA astronauts a ride into space, and even going to and docking with the International Space Station. There are currently 4 private companies, including SpaceX, that deliver cargo to space, another 4 companies, including SpaceX, that deliver crewed spacecraft into space, and 6 private companies that offer suborbital space flights to the paying public, or that will soon, including, of course, SpaceX. On September 29, 2011, a special court convened in India convicted a staggering 269 police and government officials of complicity in an atrocity in which 17 of those convictions were for rape. On June 20, 1992, almost 2 decades before the eventual convictions, a large group of officials, including 108 police officers, 155 forestry agents, and 6 revenue agents, conducted a raid on a village community suspected of smuggling sandalwood. The so-called search team ransacked private property, looted what they could, destroyed property and livestock, and assaulted scores of villagers, including the rape of 18 women and girls. By the time the convictions finally came down, 54 of the accused had already died, with the surviving convicts being sentenced to jail. On September 30, 1954, the American submarine USS Nautilus was commissioned for service as the first ever nuclear-powered warship. Serving the U.S. Navy well until 1980, Nautilus immediately gave the U.S. a tremendous advantage in submarine warfare, with the ability to stay submerged many times longer than conventional diesel-electric submarines that had ruled from World War I through the post-World War II era. Setting many records and serving as a testbed for the new technology, Nautilus became the first submarine to make a submerged transit under the North Pole in 1958, a voyage that had to be harrowing. Designated a National Historic Landmark in 1982, Nautilus set a new standard by which submarine fleets would be judged, and any supposed superpower would have to have such submarines. Considering the problems with disposal of used nuclear fuel, should we still have nuclear-powered ships? As a question for my students and subscribers, which event from this past month in history would you most like to learn more about? Please let me know in the comments section below this video. If you liked this video and would like to receive notification of new videos, please feel welcome to subscribe to History in Headlines and become one of our patrons. Your viewership is much appreciated. For image, audio, and other credits and attributions for components of the individual videos in this compilation, please see the descriptions of their respective videos, which are linked to via a playlist in this video's description.